excited to have you. Hello, Dr. Umar. How
Good
you
evening,
doing?
Queen. Good evening. How are you, sister?
I'm doing well, doing well. So glad to have you on the live tonight and to have you for the Black Wall Street Black Business Expo as our official headliner. We really, really appreciate you for accepting the opportunity and coming out and helping me educate our people. So I really appreciate you.
Looking forward to it, Queen. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So before we get into all of the blackness that we're going to discuss tonight, for the people who aren't familiar with you, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
For the people who are not familiar with me, Dr. Umar Johnson is a doctor of clinical psychology, certified school psychologist and principal, child therapist, parent advocate, former minister of education for Marcus Garvey's UNIA, blood relative of the great Frederick Douglass, founder of the National Independent Black Parent Association, author of Black Parent Advocate, The Art of War for Dealing with America's Public and Charter Schools, as well as Psychoacademic Holocaust, the Special Education and ADHD Wars Against Black Boys. And I'm currently in the process of renovating our Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy building in Wilmington, Delaware, which we hope will be ready to go by Saturday, September the 10th, which will be our second annual FDMG Family Festival in Wilmington, Delaware. And we want all your supporters and listeners to come on out and join in the festivities with us.
Absolutely. Anything to support our people, I'm game for it. So
Yeah,
you
man.
guys, he's more than accredited to be on this panel with me, to lead this discussion of rebuilding Black Wall Street. Black Wall Street has been a passion of mine since I was a little girl. I've 8 years in the game as a CPA, and one of my visions has been to rebuild Black Wall Street and get our money back into our community where it belongs. So along those lines, talk to us a little bit about how you feel financial and academic education plays a part in the Black community, in underrepresented communities.
I think it plays a very significant part in the African community. The issue when we talk about financial literacy for African people, I think we do a good job educating the general community about financial literacy. The challenge that we have is bringing the community together so there can be a community-based financial agenda. Most Black people, a lot of those in our community, they are predatory capitalists. They're predatory capitalists. So what I mean by that, they're constantly pursuing their own personal financial agenda to the exclusion of what is in the greater interest of the collective community. So we have to get away from the individual financial agenda and move to a community agenda. Otherwise, we're just practicing predatory capitalism, and that's not going to benefit us as a people. It has to be collective. All progress is group work. When you look at the Mexican community, you look at the Jewish community, you look at the Anglo-Saxon community, you look at the Chinese community, it's all done through the group. And that's why they're able to take over so much. That's why they're able to build so quickly, because teamwork makes the dream work. And in the Black community, we rather operate on an I-me basis versus a we community basis.
Absolutely. And that's what Black Wall Street was all about back then. The reason they survived, the reason they were able to build that community was because they believed in cooperative economics, something that we have not practiced since then. And that is the purpose of this event, to get back into that mentality, to start back trusting one another so that we can work together, because doing it individually and having crabs in a barrel mentality will get us nowhere. You said a key word that really tapped on a nerve for me, and it's very prominent from what I've seen this week as it relates to capitalism. Tell us how you feel about this Juneteenth Walmart ice cream.
Oh, wow. Well, I'll say that the Juneteenth Walmart situation, and of course, Walmart did pull the ice cream as a result of the backlash that they got on social media, which I believe I had a big part in that happening. But I think that was only a symptom of a much larger problem. And one of the things we have to do in our community is make sure we separate causes from symptoms. Okay. Walmart coming out with a Juneteenth ice cream was only a symptom. And they're not the only ones. There's
They are.
other corporations with all types of Juneteenth products. Even the dollar stores are going crazy with the
Mm,
Juneteenth napkins and plates and decorations and this and that. And the question becomes, why do Black people feel the need to have their cultural holy days baptized and venerated and approved by the white power structure? That
absolutely.
right there is the crux of the issue. Why do we need the same people we claim were so horrific towards us, the same people who enslaved us, the same people who mistreat us this very day? We would turn right around and say, can you please baptize this holiday? Can you please validate us? That is a contradiction. You can't be trying to get free and at the same time begging for inclusion. Those two things don't go together. You either want to be free or you want to be a part of the power structure. And I think Black people are very schizophrenic. We are very neurotic. We are very bipolar when it comes to exactly what is our relationship with the white power structure. Now, when we tie this back into Black economics, it gets even more critical, because one of the reasons why we are so comfortable hemorrhaging billions of dollars every year in non-Black business establishments is because many of us identify on the level of religion, or we identify on the level of being an American citizen. So when you walk into a supermarket, when you walk into any store as an American African, if you see yourself as an American first, there's no contradiction to go and get your hair done by the Koreans or your nails done by the Chinese. It's no contradiction to go to a white restaurant in downtown Atlanta, even if there's a Black restaurant right across the street. It's no contradiction to go to a white-owned nightclub when there's a Black-owned nightclub right across the street. Why? Because the owner of the nightclub is an American and you are an American. So
Right.
we have to look at how identity influences our financial behavior. And
Absolutely.
then on the other level, we have religion. Our people are very religious. We're Muslim,
Yeah.
we're Christian. And so if I identify on the level of religion, I can go to the white-owned nightclub because he's a Christian. I can
Mm,
go to the Korean fingers and nail spot because they're Christian. So one of the reasons why it's so hard to galvanize the Black dollar and change our collective dysfunctional economic behavior is we're identifying on the level of American citizenship and on the level of religion. As long as we stay there, we'll never support Black businesses. In order to put Black businesses first, we have to identify on the level of race first. You
mm.
understand? We have to see ourselves as African first. Until we see ourselves as Black first, we will never experience an internal contradiction, a sense of guilt by patronizing other businesses. Until we see ourselves Black first, the Black dollar will never be used to build Black power.
I'm with you on that, Dr. Umar. I really feel like we need to restore our pride in our own community, who we
Yeah.
are, where we came from, in order for us to get to the point where we go to Black businesses first before
Mm-hmm.
you go to an outside community, because that's what other races are doing. And that's why other races are dominating when it comes to wealth, because we don't go to our own first. We always go outside. Now, one of the things that I have noticed since I was a little girl, and the reason why I went into the financial industry and wanted to become a CPA in the first place, was I realized at an early age that we didn't have access to the financial resources that we needed in order to become financially literate and close the
Mm-hmm.
wealth gap. Talk to us a little bit about what you think we should do as it relates to access, and what our progress is looking like as it relates to access to wealth and closing this wealth gap.
I think that we have to start creating the vehicles that create that wealth. And what I mean by that, and of course we have Black businesses, excuse me, Black banks. We do. But I would have to constructively criticize a lot of those Black banks as also engaging in predatory capitalism. I
Mm,
don't see enough of the Black banks that are in existence doing much to empower
mm,
underfunded, disenfranchised Black communities. I have yet to see a Black bank go into a Black ghetto and turn it from a ghetto to a paradise. I haven't seen that. And until I see that, I cannot really label any of the existing Black banks as grassroots oriented Black banks. They're not. What they're really doing is practicing Eurocentric predatory capitalism, and they're doing it in blackface. So we have to build the credit unions. We have to build the banks. It only takes about $250,000 to start a bank, even less than that to start a credit union. We spend more than that on almost everything that we buy. I mean, you look at $30 billion on hair and beauty, $2 billion on Air Jordan a year, $1 billion on McDonald's a year, 700, almost $800 million chicken, turkey, beef, and pork. Electronics, we're in the tens of billions. The donations we give to the Black church. And I'm a supporter of the Black church, but we have to be honest. If we're talking about building Black wealth, and if we're talking about intergenerational wealth creation, at some point, we have to stop hiding from the Black church. We have to stop giving them a pass. And we have to talk about how the Black church is one of the biggest recipients of the Black dollar. And they do not use the money that we give them in order to empower the Black community. And another point too, Queen, that has to be dealt with on this issue, and that is the fact that Black people's economic habits are unlike those of any other culture. There's been research done on the way Black people spend and the way Black people save. And by and large, our spending is not tied to our financial agenda. It's not tied to our needs. I read a report on the Black consumer written by white folk, and they said the thing that separates Black people from everybody else in America, every other ethnicity, Black people will buy it because it is available or it makes them feel better. In other words, we'll buy a new pair of Jordans when nothing's wrong with the pair of Jordans we got because we need to have the newest ones. Right. And the reason we need to have the newest ones or the most expensive ones or the latest Gucci bag or Louis bag is because Black people, and I'm going to quote my Philadelphia brother Will Smith on this. Will Smith said, Black people have too much money. Black people spend too much money they do not have, buying stuff they do not need to impress people they do not like. Absolutely. We are part of our self-hatred, part of the eternal competition that we have with one another as African people. Part of that equation is this financial competition to always look like we're wealthier than the next Black person. You follow me? We are in an internal competition with one another to always look flyer than the next Black person. If I just bought a Mercedes and you bought a BMW, if your BMW looks better than my Mercedes or costs more, I will go and trade that Mercedes in. I will go into debt to outdo you. Right. So the financial mud wrestling that Black people are engaged in is costing our community their futures.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with you. And one of the things that I have talked about on the platforms that I've been invited to speak is the psychological aspect of why we spend the money the way that we spend it. Do you feel like our psychological habits, of course, they play a part into why we buy? You have compulsory buying, then you have people that buy things just to overcompensate for what they don't have. But do you feel like our psychological habits come from the trauma that we've experienced as Black people trying to just live, just make it?
Yes. And I'll point to two things. When we came out of slavery, if you look at some of the things that were said about us and some of the things we said about each other during Reconstruction, Black people have always had this peculiar need to look like they were enjoying the American dream even when they were not.
Right.
So when you look at us in the 1870s and the 1880s and the 1890s, we tried to look the part of a successful middle-class European. We would imitate the way white people dress. We would imitate the way they talk. We would try to drive the cars they drove. We would try to live where they lived. There has always been this preoccupation in the African mind to imitate the American dream, even if you could not live it.
Right.
And let me say this another way. Psychologically, Black people try to surround ourselves with the symbols of freedom, with the symbols of opportunity, with the symbols of the American dream as a way to convince ourselves consciously that we were actually partaking in it. You follow me? In other words, I don't earn what the white man earns. I don't make what he makes. I don't get the opportunities he got. But because he's driving that Lamborghini, I got to get one too. Because
Mm-hmm.
if I can at least drive the Lamborghini, I can somehow give the false appearance that I'm existing on his level when
Right.
I am not. And that goes back to the symbols over substance cancer that we have as a people. We are addicted to symbols over substance. This goes for everything from the election of Barack Obama, which you got nothing out of it. This goes for the election of Joe Biden, of Kamala Harris, Supreme Court Justice Ketanji. They give us symbols.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we look at the impact of these symbols after they're long gone, we see that nothing was really gained from it. We just celebrated the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court desegregation decision, May 17th. But what did we really get out of that? You see, we have to stop with the symbols. And so when we deal with the economy, Black financial behavior, once again, I am not allowed to truly live the American dream.
Right.
But I'm going to inundate my life with symbols of it to try to convince myself and other Black people around me that I'm actually living that life, and I'm not. I read a statistic not too long ago. It said that a white male who has been to jail, a white male who has been to jail, he has a felony record, a felony prison record, is more likely to get called back for a job interview than
Mm-hmm.
a Black man with
With
no
no real.
record and a master's degree.
Absolutely.
You see that? So once again, living in America as a Black person can be oppressive. It don't matter if you're middle class, upper class, lower class, or no class. And rather than fight and struggle so we can experience true equality, true freedom, we rather surround ourselves with the symbols of it. Here's another piece I want to give you, Queen. Black people pay a very high cost for the psychological pain of oppression
Mm-hmm.
and the thirst to be accepted by white folk. We do not shop because we need things. We don't even shop because we want things.
We want to
Black
feel.
people shop to make us feel better about ourselves in this racial power structure. In other words, Black women, the reason y'all have 100 pair of shoes ain't because you needed them. It's not even really because you wanted them. It was the euphoria that you felt while you were shopping.
Mm-hmm.
You see that? It's the feeling of shopping.
Right.
I feel good buying these shoes. I feel good getting 10 pair of Jordans. I feel good getting this Mercedes Benz. So it is the euphoria. It is the emotional drive that comes from spending lots of money, which is why shopping, being a shopaholic, should be a mental illness.
It should be.
The only reason why it's not is because capitalism don't want over shopping considered a mental illness because it will affect bottom line profits. That's the only reason why shopaholics are not considered mentally ill, but they are. People who are depressed shop more than people who are not. Why? Because
it
shopping
makes you feel
gives
good.
you an artificial high until what? Until you get home and look at them shoes again.
Or bill.
Yes, and you say, I really didn't need those. I don't even like these anymore. Why did I buy them? You know why you bought them? Because of how you felt in the moment. We have to stop using shopping as a form of psychotherapy.
Right.
We have to stop using shopping as a drug. This is what I tell Black people. Do not go into a store unless you absolutely need something. Window shopping is killing us. Black people's most of us overshop when we are window shopping, which means you have no agenda. You don't need nothing. You just decided to go to the mall because you was bored. Do not shop when you're bored. Do not shop when you're window shopping. In fact, we need to stop window shopping altogether because most of the conspicuous consumption is done to overcome boredom, to overcome depression, or window shopping. If we can stop shopping when we're bored, depressed, or just window shopping, we can save a whole lot of money.
I'm in 100% agreement with you. And I have always told people, one of my mantras about business, when they ask, how do you get people to come to your business? What makes your firm different from other CPA firms? I always tell people that money is relational. is not transactional. It's
Right.
about how you relate to money and how money makes you feel and how
Mm-hmm.
people feel when they give you money and when you
Mm-hmm.
receive it. So I'm in 100% agreement with you, Dr. Umar. I'm so excited to have you on the panel. I don't want to give them everything, but this conversation is so good. Before I let you go, I do have one question for you.
Sure.
One of the things that I have learned going through college and getting master's degrees and certifications, I used to believe that what we wanted was equality. Now I believe that equality is not what we should want. We should want equity. How do you feel about that?
I agree with you because being equal is not necessarily fair. If I've been kept behind longer than you
Mm-hmm.
and further than you, making me equal to you isn't fair because what has happened to me was worse than what has happened to you. The obstacles I have had to overcome to get to this point, you have not had to overcome them. So equality can be very unfair.
Right.
Equity is based on what you need based on where you have been. Whereas
Absolutely.
equality puts everybody at the same line. Equality can be quite unfair, especially for African people. But I would even go a step further because we have to make sure we don't always judge our progress by a European finish line. I
Mm.
would also argue that in addition to equity, we need to also strive for economic and financial supremacy over
Mm.
all things African. You
Mm.
understand? We have to get to the point where if we don't own it, it's not a success.
Right.
You see, and I think that Black people have we're the only group that's comfortable not dominating the businesses in our community.
Right.
Nobody else is comfortable not owning you cannot go into anybody else's community and have aliens dominating their economics. In fact, one of the things, and I see this globally, by the way, everywhere I've been, every continent except Australia, every Black economy in the world, you can't find one where the Black economy is not dominated by an outsider. There's not one on the planet. Even in Africa, even in the Caribbean islands, the Black economy is dominated by non-African people. That not only speaks to a history of oppression, colonization, that also speaks to a mindset amongst African people that
Mm.
says we are comfortable having other people dictate our financial future. And guess what? Our economic dysfunctionality bleeds into every aspect of
Of
the
our,
Black existence. For
absolutely.
example, the Black family, okay, is an endangered species, largely because the men can't find work. Why can't the men find work? Because white people are racist? That's a part of it. But what's the other part why Black men can't find work? Because the Black community is not using its disposable income to create economic opportunities to
Opportunities.
employ Black males. You see that? So when
Absolutely.
we talk about the mass incarceration of Black men, yes, it is an epidemic. Yes, it is intentional. Yes, it is racist, but we are complicit in it because we have enough money to employ every Black man in America if we wanted to. We have enough money to employ every Black woman in America if we wanted to. It's amazing how Black people keep waiting for reparations, but the Chinese don't wait for reparations when they come into your community and rob you blind. The European Jews don't wait for reparations before they come into the Black community and rob us blind. The Mexicans, the Arabs, the Latinos, nobody is waiting on reparations to come to America and rob the Black community blind. So if these people don't need reparations to become millionaires off of our Black dollar, why do we need reparations to become millionaires off of our Black dollars? I support reparations, but let's not use it as an excuse for
Right.
why we're not doing more with what we have. We are a $2 trillion people. We're the
Mm-hmm.
richest group of Africans in the world. We're the 10th richest economy on earth. We have no excuses for why we don't have at least one Black Wall Street in every state. You
City.
have
Yes.
50 million Africans, 50 states. 50 million Africans in America, 50 states. On average, that's 1 million Black people in every state. We should have 50 Black Wall Streets. There should be a bank to invest in the people in every Black community, a hospital to save the people in every Black community, a school to train the people in every Black community, and a supermarket to feed them. Those are the 4 essential institutions. But guess what, Queen? You can't find a city in America
That has a Black bank.
that has a black bank and a black hospital
Mm-hmm.
and a independent black school and a black supermarket.
Market.
Nowhere in America can you find that. But we routinely spend between $3 and $30 million a Christmas season. Easy, per city. July 4th celebrating, which you shouldn't be celebrating anyway. That's your slave master's freedom.
Right.
Easily spend millions. Easter weekend. Easily. And don't let me bring up New Year's partying. Don't let me bring up spring break. If we would only sacrifice our entertainment dollar, if we would only sacrifice our nightclub dollar, $4 billion on liquor, if we would just agree not to drink at all for 1 year, you can put a bank in the top 20 black cities in America. It's not hard to do this, but we lack the mindset, which is why I always say before we can change anything about the African reality, we have to change the mindset. There must be a psychological revolution before there can be an economic one. There has to be a psychological revolution before there be a cultural one, or one on the level of black family or black community. Until you change the way we think, you change nothing else. Put a Black Wall Street in Atlanta or Philadelphia or Texas or California. If black people are not prepared to support it, it will be out of business in 6 months. So it must be the institution as well as the spiritual commitment and conviction to make sure that they are successful. The one thing slavery did to us, sister, it took away from us the natural God-given desire to want to be captains of our own destiny. We're the only people in America who are comfortable not being in charge of their financial destiny. That is a direct psychological dysfunction that carries over from slavery.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And I'm seeing the comments coming in, and a lot of people are asking, well, what's the solution? Where do we start? This is the reason why we're doing this Black Wall Street Black Business Expo. This is our second year around. Our goal is to have a Black Wall Street in every city. This is just the start. So if you want to be a part of changing your mindset as it relates to financial literacy in our community and our lives as it relates to finances and wealth and transgenerational wealth, you need to be at this expo. Dr. Umar will be there dropping more gems than he dropped tonight. Several other financial literacy advocates and people in the community that are just as passionate about generational wealth and financial literacy will also be on the panel. Come out and support, you guys. That's where it starts. We have to be committed to the support, just like Dr. Umar said. So head on over to blackwallstreetatlanta.org. Purchase your tickets for this event. It's going to be an awesome event. Thank you so much, Dr. Umar. I cannot wait to see you. I can't wait to have more conversations with you. We look forward to seeing you next week, and we look forward to supporting you in making this a worldwide effort for us to get back in the place that we should be in. That's on top.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
See you soon, Queen. No
Dr.
problem.
Thank
All right
you.
now. God bless.